Joining me now with reaction, author of New York Times bestseller, now out in paperback, Mugged, my good friend Coulter. You know, by the way, look, what do you think of Kerry? And as you're saying this, I want you to look. We're going to put up pictures of Kerry with his buddy Assad and Pelosi with Assad.
Right.
What do you make of what he's saying versus what Obama's saying? We got to act now. We don't have to act now. We need Congress to approve. We don't need Congress to approve.
Well, it's whether we act now or later, both of them acting like this is a crime against God and man that cannot go unanswered. Assad using chemical weapons against a few hundred of his people when they're the ones, as you point out, who ferociously opposed the war in Iraq. Saddam Hussein, on a single day, gassed 5,000 Kurds, his own people. Over a few decades, he gassed about 50,000 Kurds, to say nothing of hundreds of thousands of Iranians. Moreover, what is America's national security interest in Syria? In the case of Iraq, Saddam Hussein had attempted to assassinate a former president of the United States. He had given shelter to a terrorist, one of the bombers of the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center. And yet that was a war they opposed. That was a war that ended up killing a lot of Iraqis, or rather al-Qaeda in Iraq, and the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq. Here, there's a good chance, as you and Senator Paul were talking about, that this is going to give al-Qaeda the upper hand here. I would also add that we had gone through a decade of UN resolutions, absolute proof that Saddam Hussein had used mustard gas, sarin gas, VX gas against his own people, more than 10 times, 50 times more than Assad has used. What is our proof here, by the way? They won't really tell us.
Well,
and by the way,
speaking of this, the BBC did publish a photo, and we'll show it to you. And it's hard to watch for those of you at home. Rows of dead children saying this was the Syrian chemical gas attack.
Nope.
One little problem. That was actually from Iraq. Those are the Kurds in the north. And they were gassed, yes, but by Saddam Hussein.
The war the Democrats opposed.
Mistake.
Right, because they wanted to keep the great statesman Saddam Hussein in power, like J. Rockefeller, who said we would be better off keeping Saddam Hussein in power. I mean, how do we know? You know, we need to check with Hillary here to make sure the chemical gas wasn't released by a Syrian upset by a YouTube video. You cannot trust these people on national security. They are Democrats, and I would point out that in every military intervention, well, in the past century, when Republicans are running it, we're winning. When Democrats come in, we are losing. They make a mess of things. You have Iran with Eisenhower taking out Mohammad Mossadegh. That was fantastic for America. He was a lunatic. The Shah's in power. We have a good ally. In comes Carter, and he causes this whole problem by allowing the Shah to be taken out.
We got Mubarak, now we've got Assad. Look,
we have Vietnam.
The choice.
We have Somalia.
You're right.
We have Iraq. If Obama cares about pretending to be, you know, a serious commander-in-chief, he's making Clinton look like Klaus, von Clausewitz at this point.
But think about this.
How about just sending those troops to Iraq? That is once again a war that was deposed a monster 50 times worse than Assad, that established a democracy that did not allow al-Qaeda to get control of the country, and victory is snatched, or defeat is snatched from the jaws of victory by Obama by pulling out troops. Now Iran has moved in.
Can I ask you a question?
Given that magnificent success up.
We talked to Colonel Peters and General McInerney. Who says to the enemy, this is not open-ended, no boots on the ground, days, not weeks, and, oh, by the way, this is not about regime change? Right. So who telegraphs that before you actually, how strategically, that's certainly not from The Art of War by Sun Tzu. Right. I will tell you that.
Right. All that he has accomplished is to make Bill Clinton look like a great general, like a great commander-in-chief here. No, I long for the days that America was allegedly hated by the rest of the world as opposed to the rest of the world's laughing stock. What do you think Putin thinks of this guy? And what is going to happen if Syria retaliates? Have they even thought about this?
The Wall Street Journal is saying to those that were asking for authorization for use of force, which, by the way, is a constitutional principle, we won't argue it, but here's what I want to say.
Well, I want to come back to that.
Okay, because if we really care about peace and stability in the Middle East, and we're worried about a broader war and about mass death on a scale of millions, potentially, then we really care about military action and intervention. I say go after Iran's nuclear facilities. We're now told they're a year away from getting them. Why not go there if they want to have some positive impact?
And by the way, aren't you glad Saddam Hussein isn't around to be involved in this right now?
By the way, what are the odds that the weapons of mass destruction we didn't find actually made its way to Syria?
No, in fact, do you remember Georges Sada, the general under Iraq?
That's correct.
You interviewed him.
I did.
He wrote a book, and he was one of Saddam's generals, though he supported the war in Iraq because Saddam was a monster and a lunatic. And he said on your program, and wrote a book about it, which I have, those weapons were moved on trucks right before the intervention in Iraq, and they were moved to Syria.
Yeah, wonder where they came from. All right, we're going to take a break. Stay right there. Well, more with Ann. Continue with Ann Coulter. All right, so Boehner took his position. McConnell, Cantor's supporting the president. Boehner's supporting the president. Although Boehner says he will not lobby, that it's up to them to whip the votes, meaning the White House. Mitch McConnell, more on the fence. He has not made a decision, says they need to make the case. How do you think this vote is going to go down?
I think this is absolutely crazy. As we talked about last week, the only reason Obama is going to Congress is that he's the one who issued this idiotic ultimatum. The only reason we're even talking about Syria, a piker compared to Saddam Hussein, whom they opposed deposing, is because of this ultimatum about the red line if you use weapons of mass destruction. Suddenly he decides he wants to go to Congress for a vote, as you very ably showed. Gosh, he doesn't want to go to Congress for a vote when he's actually required to under the Constitution. I say Congress only has a right to vote if he is seeking a resolution of war. If they don't like something, they can withdraw the funding for it. But the point is, you may disagree with me on that. Every president has agreed with me on it, including this one, and Obama says he's not going to abide by the vote anyway. So the sole purpose of the vote is to make Obama look like less of an idiot. Why is Congress wasting its time on this? Why not call in some more actresses and have hearings who played farmers or, professional athletes and steroid use in baseball? Those hearings have more purpose under the Constitution than a ruling from Congress on whether the president is the commander-in-chief.
He is the commander-in-chief, but Congress declares war.
This is not a war.
But the draft that came out tonight, well, anytime you're firing bombs
No,
at a
it's
country,
not. It wasn't in Grenada. It wasn't with the Contras.
I don't want to get into that because it's not going to get us anywhere. But they're going to have a clock ticking, and the clock is from the War Powers Act, which I think is idiotic, too, and you probably agree with me there.
They shouldn't vote on this.
All right,
they should
which limits
to vote.
military action to 60 days, 30 days thereafter for withdrawal.
I would also note that not only are all the Democrats who are so itching to start something they know not what in Syria, we're the ones who most vociferously oppose the war with Iraq, as are many of the Republicans, who, if they didn't oppose the Iraq war at the beginning, wow, they very quickly turned against it and started bashing it. So I wouldn't be counting on these people as your allies in whatever happens now in Syria. And I would never count on a Democrat not to screw up any foreign policy intervention.
Eleanor Holmes Norton said that Obama will be shamed and humiliated if he loses the vote. That's why Democrats are going to support him.
Well, I think they need to explain to us why they were against taking out a monster who committed 10 times as many chemical weapons attacks.
According to John McCain, Allahu Akbar means, praying to God. Same thing, praising God.
Yes, and that's why I respect him so much.